This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we have Kim Cameron on the air. So, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's so great to be on your show.
Thank you very much. We've been interviewing emerging and indie artists and, active musicians since 2018. And we're happy to have you on the show. You gave us a lot of good information. So we like to kind of go through like a standard set of questions, but you're a Billboard artist, and we want to let everybody know that. But we talk to a lot of emerging artists that haven't reached that level. But when did you first get into music? Like, at what age did you start like music?
Well, I started playing the clarinet when I was in second grade. It wasn't my first instrument choice. I actually wanted to play the flute, but at the time we had these silly music teachers that wanted it to be a well-rounded classroom full of instruments. So she says, no, we already have too many flute players, so you have to play the clarinet. So I played the clarinet, and I ended up playing the clarinet for, years and years and years. I was in orchestra and marching band. The problem with the clarinet is that
it's not a writing instrument.
Yeah, it's not a writing instrument, and there's not a lot you can do with it. Like, they don't have electronic clarinet. Like with the flute, you can use electronic flute, or you can with sax. I mean, it would have been great to do a different instrument, but yeah, I started out with in good old band, and then I kind of, I still could play the clarinet today, because once you learn, you learn.
Yeah.
But I moved into musical theater actually quite young, and stayed in choirs and musical theater all the way up till, today. So.
Well, I think that's interesting, because that's where I started. I started on a clarinet, and I was in marching band and jazz band and concert band. But like I'm 54. I'm a child of the 70s, and I like, this is not a writing instrument. How am I going to write? Like, I wanted to be in a band, so I went and learned keyboards, and that's how I got where I am now. But I think I had the same issue with that.
Well, and plus everything's in the key of B flat, so you're like, what?
Yeah, I can't really write anything with this,
I have to transpose everything, so yeah, it's a little bit more challenging.
So you started like in theater, and I see that you're still in film. You do a lot of film work, and are you kind of dividing your attention between like doing film and music, or it's all part of the same effort?
I began dabbling. My degree is actually in broadcast journalism, so you could say I'm have always done film or video since college. But when I started doing all these crazy music videos, I thought, I want to be the one who starts directing it and start editing it, and I want to start taking it over. So after my, zillionth music video, I started taking that element over, and I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. So when I began writing my children's book series, I always had this idea in the back of my head that these are ripe to be converted into either a TV series or a film, animation wise. Mm-hmm. And finally, what was it, about 4 years ago, I said, you know what, the only way I'm going to make this happen is first I got to write the screenplay, and then I just got to, dive into it. So I wrote the screenplay, which took me quite a bit of time to do, because when you're doing animation, of course, unlike film is, by the minute, but mm-hmm. When animation, it's by the second. So, because you're basically saying what you want the arm to do and how long you want the eyebrow to go up, or the facial expression. I mean, the whole thing.
A lot. Yeah, my daughter's a graphic artist, so she does like comic type art, not film, but for like graphic novels and stuff. So the film you're talking about, is that the Seeper's Powers in Search of Blue Jay's Treasure? Is that the one?
That is it. And so it took me about 4 years, from the time I did the screenplay to actually releasing it to finish it. I'd say 3.5 years. I mean, the pandemic threw a little monkey wrench into it.
Yeah.
And I had to switch, animators along the way, because I hired animators that I could afford, which they really didn't have the experience to do it. And I found that out kind of midway and had to start all over, which was actually a great thing. A costly thing, but a great thing. And sold the rights to the movie to Cinedigm. It was released December 10th in the North America, and then Tunes TV has it for Europe, and then China's going to do a theatrical release starting in January. So it's awesome. I'm still pitching it to the rest of the Asian market, and at the same time I'm working on the sequel, which is, we are very much in production. It stars Vanilla Ice, and we are, I would say, midway through the production, where this one's going a lot faster, because I actually learned something the first time.
Yeah. I guess when you get into this thing, you got using the same team of animators and same you kind of like leverage what you did before. Yeah.
Using the same ones, and I figured out some smart ways to do it. Instead of doing hand drawings on pieces of paper and scanning them in, I found a program that allows me to do storyboards, which took a while, because everybody has their own way of doing storyboards, and that just cut so much time off of the whole storyboard and screenwriting process, that I probably saved 4 months by just having this program that allowed me to draw on my tablet. So that was amazing. So I think this one I'll probably finish within a year and a half, which is, compared
to like writing songs like Perfect or Love Story, the film is a lot longer, like a timeline, right?
Well, it's a lot longer timeline, and you have to realize that animation just takes a lot longer. It's a lot more detail oriented. It's just a lot more. It's very.
It's heavy. That's a heavy.
It's a heavy lift, and in addition to that, you still are creating music. So it's not just the story and the film and the voices. But
it's all like a soundtrack. It's like a musical. It's like it goes to your It goes back to your kind of your theater background. So you kind of leverage your theater, and then took it into the next level of media, which is to turn it into film. And that's pretty cool, because my daughter, like, she's heavily involved in like graphic novels and actually doing like gallery shows and art direction. She's still in school. She's just got like a residency and stuff like that, but it's just cool that she's able to live kind of totally as an artist, which I'm still kind of doing like other things. But I can understand, like, because she's taken a very long time to do her graphic novel, because she's very detailed on what she wants to do, and so it's taken like film length time to do it. But it's just that I think that those different types of media can take a lot of time. But some musicians can take forever to write a song, like Bruce Springsteen took like 6 months to do Born to Run. So one song. So it can't. It depends on what you're doing.
It does, and it depends on are you going to be satisfied? I mean, musicians in general, we're perfectionists. It's never good enough. You could always tweak this. You can always tweak that. And if we really followed that, we'd never release anything. I
do like that. Yeah, going in that direction. I do like to ask people, like, because I'm a child of the '70s, right? And I kind of like, the old school way of recording in studios, where the DAW, they were like in the studio, and a lot of times like a full band in the studio actually playing the whole song and maybe run through it, and versus like being in the DAW, the digital audio workstation. I mean, do you primarily work in the modern style of recording with like the digital audio workstations, or do you like to kind of maybe do the old school?
I do both, depending on what the song is. So and my first 2 albums I did with live instruments, Then I did several albums all electronic. But for the movie, for example, which is I have a very eclectic mixture of music going into the movie. Some is very, what I would say, traditional pop, like Disney-esque.
Mm-hmm.
I used probably 6 songs that were all with live instrumentation, because I wanted that kind of big.
You want to feel, yeah.
Yeah. But then there's a bunch of other songs that are electronic because it just fits the scene. So
Yeah.
It really, I think dance music for the most part lends itself to an electronic, it's beat on repeat. So you can let, but having said that, I do think that when I've had several tracks that I've added some Latin percussion, which I love with dance music, and which is live instrumentation, or lots of saxophone, which to me just brings out
saxes are awesome.
The flavors. So I'll mix it up. I've done, like I said, a mixture of both and stuff in between.
Yeah, because I've been a big there's always a controversy like in electronic music, and I'm kind of a DAW-less producer. I've been using hardware recorders and hardware synths for a long time, just because like I grew up like in the '70s, and when I first started writing music, I had a Tascam 4-tracker, and a Roland D5, and a chord sequencer, and that's how I used to put things down. And I used to play with a band in the basement. And like that's how we put everything down on like Tascam and reels, and that's kind of what I like the feel of writing like that. So I just continue to use like hardware recorders like Tascams and Zooms, just because I like the feel of being able to make decisions at the instrument.
Okay.
And so that's why I chose to do, even though I'm an electronic musician and I could use my MPC or my Akai's and stuff. I kind of like just playing my Moog right into the recorder.
Yeah.
And
why not?
Yeah, well, because you can. But yeah, it's interesting what you can do today, because you can make choices to whether you're going to do it that way or go into a studio or do everything. And then, like I said, it's like it serves the song. Like if a song should have like a punk aesthetic, then you're going to have like a harder edge. If it have a rock aesthetic or it's got a disco, you can do anything today. You could do a 1920s type song. It really doesn't matter. It's like if it feels right, you do whatever feels right for the song.
Oh yeah, I'm a believer in that for sure.
So one of the other things we like to get into is your influences and your reference points. We kind of could try to understand like your aesthetic. So are you like, would you want to talk about like who your major influences as an artist are, or?
They're all over the map, I have to tell you. I would say from a dance music perspective, like a pure, beat on repeat, I am I love all the classic guys out there who I guess they're still writing their own stuff, or they have some ghostwriters. I'm not really sure, but there's some really talented DJs out of both Germany and out of the UK. I've worked with some of them, meaning like the Wide Boys. I just find them super, super talented still. I mean, they still are, showing the world that they know exactly what's going on. I also, it's fun to when you listen to, what I really like is when people, like Black Coffee, he'll take deep house and he'll say, you know what, I'm just going to turn it upside down a little bit. And for me, I could listen to him all night because he's super interesting and super easy to listen to. It doesn't mean he's going to like blow your socks off, but he's just a super easy guy to listen to. It's just very to me. Obviously, there's, who everybody knows, Kygo is super fun. Nora and Pure. I have a tendency to like these producers that are flavor the deep house more than anything else, because I'm a deep house lover. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I only get influenced by them.
Deep house. So deep house is like the primary like genre of your music, like on Spotify. I see that that's how they tag you as a.
Yeah, I would say I have more deep house than anything else, and house would be kind of the second, and then several electro pop kinds of tunes. So that's on the kind of beat on repeat. But when it comes to lyrical content, I do like telling stories in my songs, and I've been always influenced by, you know, Sweet Baby James, because you listen to his, now he's Americana, so it completely different, but you listen to him and it's so vivid. He tells these stories in his songs that are, you can see it, you know, he's only singing it to you, but you can see exactly the picture that he's painting. And I just find he's been a, you know, tremendous influence on how I think about songwriting. And, you know, his melodies are timeless. I mean, they're really timeless.
Well, I think that's why I like to talk to singer-songwriters. Not that, you know, vocalists that don't write their own music, it's a different thing, because like your voice is your instrument. But my focus when I in my podcast has been to talk to, you know, creators that actually, you know, are the writer. Yeah, that, you know, they're singer-songwriters. Just because I like the idea of you know, like every time I listen to a singer-songwriter, I get like their worldview. I get to get picture of how they see things, and then knowing that they're the writer of the song, it just makes me feel. I don't know. I'm a child of the '70s, so I kind of grew up in that age of those type of artists, and I kind of still follow that. But and I know there's other people that, you know, the producers and people that don't write their own stuff. But this podcast primarily focuses on people who are, you know, creative in that way. So yeah, I think the song structure, I've actually telling a story, and I understand their songs are not about that. They're just beat focused. They're kind of, you know, but I'm more. I do like to understand the focus of like you're telling the story or putting together a full song in an album type of format. It's kind of like maybe that's lost today with the playlist, but yeah, what do you think of that? I mean, do you write more like singles, or do you write for like full album concepts?
Well, I used to write full albums. I've kind of stopped that approach, because what I found was the people who follow me, so my fans, they're very I don't want to say needy, but they're always looking for the next
Song.
what's the next thing they're working on, right?
Yeah.
And so we release the full album, then they'll listen to all of it, and then they'll say, like, okay, what's next? And I'm like, well, you know, yeah, just did 12 songs. Come on. So I find it works better for me if I just release a little bit at a time. It seems to make them happier. I don't get the whole when are you going to release new material question, because I'm just gradually doing it throughout the year. And you know, I'm a serial songwriter, so
yeah.
At this point, I have about 450 songs I've written, which is a bunch of different genres, but it's still, you know, it takes time, and releasing a full album. I mean, I'd love to release a full album again. I just, between working on the film and feeding my dance fans, I just don't see that happening anytime soon. Although I am going to release the full album of the soundtrack for the movie, but to me that's a little. I categorize that different.
Yeah,
but I do.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think we are in a kind of single focused era, kind of like the '50s, and you know, back then, you know, if you did get an album, it was just a collection of all the hits, right? Yeah. And we're kind of in that kind of phase where it's not like the '70s or late '60s where suddenly the Beatles opened up this idea, oh, you can have an album and have this big, like, you know, canvas that where now people kind of playlist, or they're needy, or because your fans want something all the time. So maybe you do an EP of the best four that songs that do well. But you know, over time you just release like individual singles. We kind of went into singles era. But that's, you know, it's cool. I think you can figure out how to present it in different ways. You can always go and some people go and do like, some kind of like tape. They do I don't know what they call them, but they mixtapes. So you can
Yes.
kind of give people that if they want something like that, you can release it in a mixtape way, and
Yes.
it's a different way to get it out.
It's true. It's true. It is a different way to get it out.
So one of the other things we were talking about, like you kind of go whatever serves the song, whether you do a full like studio recording or use a DAW. And have you been playing live because of the pandemic? This used to be like when I first started, it wasn't like a big issue, but like nowadays, like, are you able to play live? Are you focused because of the movie? You don't need to play live, or are you planning to play live?
Well, I have played live. So the good thing is I'm based in Florida. So we opened up a lot sooner than a lot of the US. And while some of the venues were apprehensive about having live music, they did have live music. So I did after the first, I want to say after the first year, we did a couple of live shows here in Miami Beach, and that felt really good to do that again. Maybe we did, 3 or 4, I want to say. And then I had hoped that we were going to be full charge and I was going to be, out touring. But then we kind of went into, Europe went into another sort of
Lockdown, yeah. So you couldn't go out
So
there.
everything just sort of stopped again. And so it just started up and then we stopped again. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the movie. I'll just put everything on hold. So, now comes 2022 and we're still kind of waiting. Are you going to open? You're not going to open. And so this summer I've done some, in fact, tonight I have a private performance, but I've kind of said, okay, everybody's going to try to tour right now, and I'll let that sort of settle, and I'll just next year I'll start planning a much.
Yeah, I think 2023 is going to be better because it's still kind of hesitant, and like I had a booking agent. I was supposed to go to Europe because like what I do like very experimental stuff, and it works like in Denmark and Iceland, Netherlands. That's kind of like my market. Going to places like that, and so if I go, but then I couldn't go because they all got shut down.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing. I doubled down on the podcast. So I've been doing the podcast, and it's actually worked really well because I've been recording an album and working on the podcast and doing online music festivals, and I've been able to find like a niche online where I can do okay. So I'm like, okay, I can live with that. I mean, I used to go to New York and Boston, and I wanted to go to Europe and go abroad, but like, I'll go when I can. I'm not going to freak out about it. I'll just do it when I can.
Well, and right now Europe is saturated with, I mean, I've watched my musical friends, they've all like just gone to Europe and saturated the market as, venues have opened up. So the venues are full, like they're not only do they have people who are dying to go, but they've also got a stack of musicians. So, it's now, in a good way. And I think 2023 will be more normalized where you don't have this, staff of musicians who hadn't performed for 2 years who are.
Yeah, everybody was trying to, his pipe was sitting in the queue and they all got to go through the queue. And then I would kind of wait for that to settle down.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, because I don't want to get stuck in the queue.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's really cool that you've got like a lot of ways to be out there because part of the thing being a musician today, now you got to have your sync licensing, you got to have the different ways to get the music to people because, streaming, it's great, but you don't really get paid a lot from it unless you're like mega big. So you have to have other ways to do it. And it seems like, so with your movies, you're probably getting a lot more sync licensing opportunities, right?
Well, I've always had sync licensing, but not because of my movies, just, in general of because of the breadth of my catalog. My movie, believe it or not, even though it was released last December, is still making its way around the globe. people don't realize how long it really takes for movies to be infiltrated into the various places and platforms. And like I mentioned, we're going to go theatrical release in China into 6 major cities, but they don't want to do it until 2023.
So it's still taking a while to fully get the full impact.
And China's a little bit different market, right? Because they have to, it's already been approved, but it had to go through the
approval board has to look at it and make sure they don't get upset.
Yeah, and then China, the government there, if they're gonna sponsor something like that, they do a whole marketing thing for those places that they're going to deploy it. So they're very methodical in how they do it. They're very, they're not going to just buy something and throw it against the wall. They'll say, this is sanctioned by us. We want you to come see it. This is, so it's quite extensive how they work it, which is great. But again, that's going to be a next year kind of.
It's a lot of planning, a lot of bureaucratic stuff to go through to get to it.
Yeah.
But
so it comes, but movies, they take a couple years after they're released for you to kind of get all the benefits associated with it.
Yeah, I can see that, because it's kind of like, it's like everything you put out there, there's always a kind of delayed response. When you're an artist, it's like, when's it going to come through? It's like, okay, wait, and it will come through. It's kind of like exactly.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, it's the kind of nature of being a musician. Like, when's that coming? Oh, okay. Like, you want it right now, but now the other stuff I won't get for okay, fine.
Exactly.
I'll just work on the next thing. But so I think the other thing I wanted to get into, I always ask people about collaborating. It seems like, well, you have a band you work with, right? When you put together the live stuff, or is that just you overdubbing everything?
No, I mean, again, it depends. I actually work with several musicians around the globe. So because I've toured so many different places, one of the things that I found is the last thing you want to do is take a band with you. Now, I did take my band when I went to China, but for the most part, it's a lot easier if you're dealing with local musicians. They it just makes life on many levels much easier. So I work with a bunch of guys out of LA when I go to the West Coast. I worked with a bunch of guys out of Miami, actually, when we were doing shows here. I work with guys in Austin, and in Europe, I have several in.
Kind of like a Steely Dan approach.
Yeah. Well, and most bands are like that. If they're really touring, if they're not doing something local, if they're really touring. There's a lot of musicians, they don't really want to, like, I don't want to fly over there, I don't want to do this, or they're booked, right? They're doing a lot of gigs and trying to make that work in their schedule, and in the venue schedule, the festival schedule is always hard. So, but I have super talented people that I work with pretty consistently when I go to different places, and it's been so interesting and fun, because European musicians have a completely different way they play than the U.S. musicians.
Yeah, I kind of found that. I interview a lot of European musicians, and I've kind of picked up that aesthetic.
It's not that they're bad or anything, but they get introduced to music so much later than we do, and you can kind of feel. And then there's a difference between like French musicians and German musicians and Spanish musicians, and that difference is really interesting. I mean, the Germans are very methodical, right?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Study, and they're doing that, right?
Yeah, it's like a Japanese musician, same kind of thing I've run into.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like the Spanish ones are more like the flow, they're very organic and stuff like that. And the French are sort of in between both of those. So it's
so sometimes they're like very intense, and at other times they're laid back. So it's kind of like divided. You don't know which way it's going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I've run into that. It's just interesting, because I've interviewed like 140 people since 2018, 140 different artists, and
Wow.
all over the world. And last week I interviewed an artist from Spain, and I'm
Oh, nice.
interviewing an artist from uh, the Germany, and yeah, I've interviewed like heavy metal bands out of Germany, and it was like, wow, they were really intense and really like detailed, trying to kind of channel Van Halen or like really heavy metal type of stuff. But they're very intricate, and they were really focused on the classical level soloing.
Yes.
That they were very much into that, and they're like heavily studying it in all different ways. And I'm like, okay, but like, are you guys having fun? I always ask, it's like, are you having fun, or you're like, I know it's a different aesthetic, but like when you get into music, like I kind of do it because I love it, and I always ask people like, you do it because like when you're a creative person, you do it because you love it,
Well, I think that's the U.S. approach for sure, but I don't know that that's necessarily everybody's approach. But I mean, in the U.S., if you're a musician, the only reason you're doing it is because you love it, because it's a super, super, super hard job.
Yeah.
So, I think most people don't realize the amount of effort it takes to do one show. They think, oh, well, you just played for an hour or a half hour like that. And you're like, yeah, but the amount of prep that goes into that one half hour is like days worth of stuff. So
it's everything. Like your song, I mean, how much effort, how much money do you spend out of your own money on your own equipment and your own stuff, right? Like people don't realize how much a musician has to pay to get that work done. That it takes a lot of work, and they don't even realize, and music should be free.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
the music industry has the same problem that the news industry has, which is, everybody believes that music should be free because they grew up listening to the radio, and well, that was free. I didn't have to pay for anything. So converting people over to, well, now you have to pay. So you've got a slight change because people are paying for a Spotify not to have the commercials, or XM radio, but it's still
vinyl. People, you can get people to buy vinyl. I've been figuring that out.
But it's still a slow, it's a slow transition process to get people to believe that music is actually not free, but it's heading in that direction. I still think we're a good 6 years away from people understanding that you actually have to pay for music, but it's
yeah, I mean, what I found with a lot of indie bands I talk to is that what they found is selling their T-shirt, they make more money than they do on Spotify. That's fine, but they have found that selling tapes and mixtapes and doing actually even getting into NFTs and all kinds of other things, right? They're finding ways to monetize themselves. They're finding ways to get into the vinyl, get into the tapes, even get into like reel to reels and all kinds of stuff. That's like, because they package the art. It's the whole thing that when I was a kid, one of the things I loved about the music, I pick up a Led Zeppelin album, I look at the album, and I had all these cutouts, or it had the design of the music. So when the music was delivered in the past, you got art with it, you got lyrics with it, you got this whole package, and it was kind of part of the experience. And maybe this generation doesn't know that because they didn't feel that. But I think the people, when they start to get into that, they start to buy the new high end, turnstiles, and they go to get back into buying records. And then they realize, oh, there's a whole experience in actually having the art and reading the lyric sheet and physically touching the album. Yeah. And that I think is starting to get some people like, oh, that's cool. And, my daughter is like, she's 22 and she's getting all this vinyl. And a lot of her friends are. I'm like, wow, that seems to be a new trend.
Vinyl has really taken off. I mean, it still dwarfs digital downloads, but it's remarkable how much it has taken off, and how turntables have come back around, and there are no new ideas, right? It all
Yeah, you go
recycles.
back and bring something back. You know, everybody wants the 8-track back, but they didn't work it.
Yeah.
So like I would love an 8-track, but I remember my dad getting mad and eating the tape. Um, that was the bad thing about them. They were cool until they broke, and then they weren't
Until
cool
they
anymore.
broke.
Yeah,
Or
and then
it was hot, then they kind of went weak on you, and then they really, really broke.
yeah, it's like you know, watch. I was just listening to like songs in the key of life on 8-track, and my dad was playing it so much they broke it, and you should have seen the look on his face when it broke. He was like, "My Stevie Wonder album, what happened?" It's like, it's like, well, it broke. It's like, well, I can't control how that works.
Yeah, I
but
know.
yeah, I just think I think as musicians we just have to find what's going to work for us to get people like to understand, because it's weird because I see my daughter, you know, with YouTubers, and I understand that's cool, like they're playing video games, and but they're getting tips and people are paying them and they're not buying music, and I'm
Yeah,
like, it's like, how can we get the audience to be engaged and want to give us a tip like they give a YouTuber a tip?
yeah.
I think that's what, like, we got to figure out the kind of magic sauce to, like, how can we get people to realize, well, maybe you should tip us too.
Right, right.
um, but yeah, I mean, it's not all about money, but that's, we got to think about it. But so it's like you've got a lot of things going on with your film and your music, and so you've got are your plans to continue to release a lot of singles? Because I see for this year on your Spotify, you got a lot of 20 a lot of music that's actually been released this year.
Yep, this year I released, you know, uh, quite a few singles, and I'll go into, I have this project I've had for years, which is to try to get a Christmas album done. And
Well,
I only
that's a
have,
smart thing. That's a good marketing ploy. That's, I think
yeah,
it's
I have only 3 songs that I've done for the Christmas album. So this year I'm going to try to add 2 more. So that's my next project over the next 2 months, is to get 2 more Christmas songs done. Eventually, I will get this whole album of Christmas music done, but I got to say it's taken me some time to get there.
well,
Uh,
I do see you have like a love story remix EP that I
yeah,
guess, so that's kind of, that's the type of thing where you can kind of put together more than one track. Do you find it like you like to use like the remix format? Is that something you like to do? You continue?
yeah. I mean, I'm known for my music in the clubs, and the clubs, they want both the original and they want several remixes. That's just the way the DJs work.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
having just a single without the remixes is not very interesting to them.
Hmm.
So I always, choose. I have obviously my favorite remixers that I work with, but I always have remixes for the singles that I release. It's every once in a while I won't release a remix with it, but it's kind of rare.
So Perfect is the latest song, right? That's the latest song.
Perfect is the latest song, and I have a couple remixes with that with 2 different artists, and it's super deep house, super dreamy, super love oriented. It's one of those very chill, even though it's 124 on the BPM. I
Hmm.
would say it feels much slower because of the vocal content.
I
Um,
do like it when things go a little slower because then you can kind of put a little bit more into it. At least in my opinion. But like if you go too fast, not that you don't layer on faster songs, but I like what happens when you slow something down. I just like the feel of it. But
Yeah, I was in that kind of mindset. Now, this one was one of the hardest songs I had to sing because I did the whole thing in a semi whisper, which is very hard to keep in tune. I mean, the amount of time I had to redo the vocals because,
oh, because the
I,
volume kept on shifting and you didn't have it consistent.
yeah, when you sing in a whisper format, it's very hard to keep from being pitchy. And
Hmm.
oh my gosh, I thought I was just going to jump out the window, and then I would try to do it without, and I was like, no, the song really needs that whisper. So I was set on what the vocal needed to be. It took me a long time to get the vocal to where it should be. It was
it's like you got to be looking at a meter and make sure you're in the right range while you're trying to sing.
it's very, very challenging to sing and whisper.
Yeah, it's hard unless you got the.
I've done a lot of whisper singing as a background, so
backing track is probably easier to control because it doesn't have to be what the main vocal has got to be.
Yeah, and it's more for texture. This one quite a bit different. So so that was kind of fun. I do like to challenge myself.
Yeah, I was watching like a Peter Gabriel documentary on when he actually was showing some of the shadow vocals he did, which was very interesting because I like to get into like song theory and structure, and Gabriel's like very experimental, and he had these like shadow vocals that you really wouldn't know what they're gonna do unless you put the other layers on them, and then once you put the other layers in, it's like, wow, did you actually like know that it was gonna be like that, or did you kind of accidentally find that? And that's the question with the guys like that. It was like, oh, I knew I was going to do that. I'm like, okay, you knew it was going to, but that's kind of, it's always the secret sauce of how people put things together. But
absolutely.
Do you really get into that kind of layer? Do you like to do a lot of layers?
I do like to do a lot of layers, but again, I would say it's very specific to the song. Some songs I like a much, sometimes I'll hear it and I'll be, no, this one needs to be just super simple and straightforward. And so I will do that. To me, the song dictates everything.
That's what you do. Yeah, because a lot of times it's like in order to, to get the, I don't know what's out there today. A lot of people like double their vocal, or they have multi tracks on the vocal with all these, and then when you go to actually play it, then it's like you got to play with the multi track. When you actually go to perform it, or you make a different version when you go to perform it. That's the question I have. Because if you have so many layers, how do you replicate that unless you got background singers singing all those parts?
Yeah, I'm not a big, even though I do for the production. I do really love having lots of layers in the vocals just because it's fun for me as a singer to do that. And I think it sounds great in the production. But singing live, because at the end of the day, I started out singing with a band and not tracks. So I can't wrap my head around singing with my own backing vocals.
So you don't even try to do that. You just
I don't try. I mean, I could, but I try to keep it real. So I mean, what I really want to do is what Kylie Minogue does, which is take around 5 background singers.
Oh yeah, do it that way. Yeah,
and bring them around, and it sounds great, right? But
yeah, you got to afford that.
And nobody will really sing with me. I don't know why. I can never get anybody to sing with me. So my band typically is making up the difference, and especially like my keyboard player, he'll make up the difference of me not having vocals. And
having those layers.
It'll sound full, even though, I just don't have that. And I definitely have, a lot of effects that I'll put on my
there's enough effects.
Try to make up for that. But
on your voice, there's enough things you can do with the tech today that you don't necessarily have to have the backing tracks, and a lot. That's one thing I've always liked as a fan. If I go see a band and it's exactly what I heard on the record, because they're running like their Pro Tools, or they're running their DAW, and it's like all the backing tracks are there, and they're kind of like muted, some of them, and they're singing to them live, and I'm like, well, I could just sit there and listen to the record. I want to hear you actually perform it.
Yeah.
But that's just my thing. And some people want to hear it exactly as it is, and that's their choice. But I used to go see the Allman Brothers because I like to see them just jam.
Yeah.
Or go see the Who because they're actually going to play it different than what they do on the record. And I think that's the whole thing about live performance. I would expect that like maybe the live version is a little different, and that's kind of like the point of doing it live. Oh, I always thought, but it seems like today there's a different opinion with some groups.
Well, and it also depends on what the venue is asking you for. So I have done a couple of shows where they've said, look, we're just going to feature you. We don't want a band. Just bring the track. And
Oh, so you're doing like with the DJ, like a DJ,
so,
just run the DJ version. Yeah.
So you'll have like a little synth thing going on. You got the track, and I'll do it, you know, because I always want to make sure I'm doing the venue right with what they can actually support. And
yeah, because that's where the people want it to be what it is.
Right.
You know, because you're in there, they want it to sound, so they want to dance to it. They want it to sound like what they expect.
Right.
So I get that. Like I said, I grew up in watching the Grateful Dead, going to see Funkadelic. That's my kind of aesthetic. So I like people just like Zappa, and he's gonna just do whatever he wants.
Absolutely.
But that's just a different aesthetic. But it's just interesting to talk to a person who's a filmmaker. We've had a couple on. But it's really cool that you've got a very diverse background. You got a really interesting story. I'm really happy that you came on the show, because it's good to be able to show people in our audience, who are actually kind of working really hard and haven't made it, like how a working musician actually gets it done. That's I think that's pretty cool.
Well, it's very complimentary. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I think it's we love to have people come on, and this right now is recorded, but we will be putting it through our Anchor FM partner, which is part of Spotify. So it will go to like 11 platforms, like Amazon, Google, Radio Public, Spotify, Apple, and we actually will get a converted version onto YouTube, which will be kind of just like a lyric video kind of thing, but it will actually go to YouTube.
Fantastic.
So we'll send you the links as they start to get created. It will take like an hour for them to start propagating. But we're very happy that you came on the show, and we look forward.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing your movie. Is there a way for I can actually see that on the net right now, or is it?
Yeah, it's on all the major streaming platforms in the U.S. So
like Netflix and stuff like that. I can see it.
Go to Amazon and Tubi Tunes and Dove Channel, and there's a host of them.
Okay, so Amazon Prime is on. So if I have Amazon Prime, I can get it.
Yes, you can get it.
Well, that's cool. Like, everybody go on Amazon Prime and check it out. So Kim Cameron, we've got your links. They will be in the write-up on the description of all the podcasts. So we will have your active links in your bio and all that information. And we're glad that you joined us today. And thank you very much. And everybody, remember, we do have one sponsor we have to mention. Newsly is an iOS app that reads back the news to you. And we're actually on that app as a podcast. So it takes the video apps when we do a video podcast and translate to audio, but this is audio only. But if you use Ghost code Ghost 2021 to get 1 month free premium subscription to Newsly, and check it out. Stop scrolling. Keep on listening. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you.
This is Fam Electric Ghost, and Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. So for the first time in history on the net, the web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing, stop scrolling, start listening. They have podcasts as well, so explore trending podcasts from over 40 countries. Our podcast, the Fam Electric Ghost podcast, is on there too, so download and use Newsly for free now from www.newsly.me. So that's www.newsly.me, and that's NEWSLY.me. And so use the promo code GHOST2021 and receive a 1 month free premium subscription. So like that's a pretty cool deal. So all you got to do is use GHOST2021 and you get a 1 month free premium subscription to Newsly. Check it out. You'll like it. I listen to it every day, and it's really great. Thank you. And keep on listening to Peg and everything else on Anchor FM and Spotify podcast. Thank you.